flames licked the dark cabin walls like hungry serpents, casting ragged orange light across Mary's face as she hauled her screaming daughter out into the freezing night. "Don't look back," she yelled, voice cracked and hoarse from smoke. Sarah fought, her little fists beating against Mary's chest. "Papa, he's in there." The wind roared like a living thing, hurling sparks and embers across the yard. A half-broken fence caught fire in a burst of dry snapping wood. Mary's eyes streamed tears, half from grief, half from smoke. She looked over her shoulder once, just once. Through the flames and falling roof timbers, she saw Samuel's silhouette, trying to crawl, one arm reaching for her hand. Then the roof caved in. The roar of collapsing timbers drowned out her scream. She staggered, dropping to her knees in the frozen dirt. Sarah tumbled beside her, sobbing hysterically. Mama. Get him." Mary felt her body seize up. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She wanted to run into the fire, wanted it to take her too, but rough hands seized her arms and yanked her up. "Get up, Mary." Hollis's face loomed through the smoke, gray beard crusted with frost and ash. His eyes were cold steel. He backhanded her lightly, snapping her out of it. "The hell you think you're doing?" He rasped. "You want to burn alive?" Mary coughed, dragging Sarah into her arms. "Samuel, ... double quotes," she sobbed. "He's gone," Hollis bellowed. "Now move." He spun her around and shoved her so hard she stumbled. Bushy mustache. Didn't know his real name was already leading the horses away from the burning ruin. "Kane's men'll see this fire from 20 miles, he spat. "They'll be on us before dawn." Mary barely heard him. Her ears roared with blood and fire. She felt the wind cut through her thin skirts, freezing her legs instantly. Sarah shivered against her, her tiny sobs racking her ribs. Ma. Mary held her so tight, she squeaked. "I'm here," she whispered, even as her teeth chattered so hard she bit her own tongue. Hollis grabbed her shoulder again. "You listen to me, woman? You got 2 kids now, yours and that boy. You get them to safety or they both die. You hear me?" Mary blinked at him. "That boy James, he's half dead already," Hollis snapped. "When you lose your head now, you bury 2. She turned slowly. James was slumped in the snow nearby, barely conscious. His face was blistered from heat on one side, frozen on the other. Bushy mustache was trying to rouse him. "Come on, boy," he muttered. "We gotta ride." Mary swallowed a sob and forced her legs to move. She went to James and gathered him. In one arm, Sarah in the other. Her knees nearly buckled. Hollis barked, "Move." She staggered forward. Behind her, the cabin fell in completely. Sparks roared up into the black prairie sky. Sarah shrieked. Burying her face in Mary's neck, James let out a choked, rattling cough. Mary didn't look back again. She couldn't. She wouldn't survive it. The wind howled like a pack of wolves. Across the open prairie, tearing at Mary's skirts as she stumbled forward, James slung over her shoulder like a sack of meal. Sarah clinging to her neck and sobbing hoarsely. "Don't stop," Hollis growled behind her. He pressed one huge hand against her back, keeping her upright when her knees buckled. The snow fell thick and wet, blinding them to anything beyond a few feet. Bushy mustache led the way, cursing low under his breath. "Can't see a damned thing," he spat, voice muffled by his scarf. "We're walking blind," Hollis didn't answer. He kept pushing Mary forward. Her breath rattled in her lungs, burning from the smoke she'd inhaled. Tears froze on her lashes. James made a thin, whimpering sound. She shifted him higher, feeling his cold seeping through her dress. "Baby." "Hold on," she rasped. Sarah clutched tighter, her tiny fingers biting into Mary's collarbone. "Mama, I'm scared." Mary bit down on her lips so hard she tasted blood. "I know," she whispered. "Me too." They trudged on. The wind moaned over the open ground, whipping the last sparks of their old life into ash and memory. Mary tried not to think about Samuel, about how his hand had reached for her as the roof caved in. She focused instead on James's breathing ragged. Thin but there. Bushy mustache paused, peering into the dark. "Ridge ahead," he called. "Can't take the horses up. Go on foot, Hollis grunted. They'll track us, Mary croaked. They'll try. Hollis's voice was flat, final bushy. Mustache turned, his eyes twin pinpoints of reflected firelight. You sure you want to do this, old man? Snow's deep. Kids won't make it far. Hollis glared at him. You got another idea? Silence? Bushy Mustache spat into the snow. Didn't think so. Mary felt a cold worse than the blizzard settle in her chest. Sarah whimpered again. Mama. It's too cold. Mary swallowed hard. She shifted James, felt how limp he was. We keep going, she croaked. She didn't wait for the men. She just started forward. Hollis cursed, but followed, dragging the horse along behind. For long minutes, the only sounds were the crunch of boots in snow and the wind crying like something alive. James let out a long, rattling breath. Mary froze. James. Nothing. She shook him gently. James. His head lolled back, eyes closed, lashes rimmed in frost. Panic seized her chest like iron. James. Ah! Sarah began screaming. Hollis dropped the reins and stomped forward. Gimme him. Ah! Mary held tighter. No. He's mine. He's mine to save. Hollis's face softened for a fraction of a second. Mary, listen to me. I'll die if you don't let go, she sobbed, shaking her head violently. Bushy Mustache loomed beside them, Cain's mental. See this damn fire from 10 miles, he muttered. We don't move, they'll be on us by dawn. Mary ignored him. She dropped to her knees in the snow, cradling James, rocking back and forth. Please, baby, open your eyes, please. They didn't move. The wind screamed. Hollis knelt and put a rough, calloused hand on her shoulder. Mary, we have to go. She shook him off, hair whipping around her face. I won't bury another. Hollis's eyes glistened. I know. Bushy Mustache peered back the way they'd come. Light on the horizon, he said quietly. Mary didn't look. She pressed her lips to James's forehead, feeling how ice-cold he was. Don't you dare leave me, she whispered, voice cracking. The wind gusted, blowing out the last ember of warmth in her heart. Will James survive? Will they escape? Mary's knees sank deep into the snow as she rocked James in her arms. His breath was so shallow she could barely feel it, and each second that passed twisted her insides tighter. Don't you dare leave me, she rasped, voice torn raw. Snowflakes clung to James's lashes, his skin as pale as the moonlight breaking through the storm. Sarah's sobs pierced the wind, high and shrill. She clung to Mary's skirts, wailing. Hollis moved behind her and laid a hand on her shoulder again. Mary, we can't wait. She shook, trying to fight him off without dropping James. Bushy Mustache scanned the dark horizon. They're coming. I see the torches now. Damn it, Hollis. Mary pressed her face to James's cold forehead. Please, she whispered. Her tears fell onto his cheek and froze there instantly. Hollis's grip tightened, fingers digging into her shoulder. He needs fire, or he dies. Now. Mary blinked up at him, eyes wild. Bushy Mustache's voice cracked. There's no wood, no time. Hollis turned on him with the fury of a man who'd buried too many friends. Then we burned something. Silence fell so suddenly the wind felt even louder. Bushy Mustache stared at Hollis like he'd lost his mind. Mary followed his gaze. She saw it too. The old pack horse stood behind them, stamping and snorting, breath-fogging in terror. Its sad eyes glinted in the torchlight growing brighter on the horizon. Bushy Mustache's voice dropped. Jesus, Hollis. Hollis didn't blink. We don't have a choice. Mary swallowed, bile rising in her throat. Sarah was screaming now, though she didn't understand why. James made one small, strangled sound like he was drowning. Mary's head snapped back, toward him. She felt it. He was slipping away. She lifted her face, tears streaking frozen cheeks. Do it. She whispered hoarsely. Bushy Mustache's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Hollis drew his long hunting knife with steady fingers. He stepped toward the horse. The old gelding sidestepped, Ears back, sensing death, bushy mustache grabbed the reins tight, teeth gritted. Turning his face away, Mary turned James's face into her shoulder, so he wouldn't see anything even if he wasn't conscious enough to remember. The wind carried the horse's final scream away into the endless black prairie. Mary squeezed her eyes shut so hard she saw stars. Choked sob escaped her. She couldn't tell if it was her own or Sarah's. The smell of blood hit them instantly warm. Coppery, somehow worse than the burning cabin. Hollis moved fast, grim and practiced, carving, splitting, stacking blood-soaked flesh and bone into a heap. Bushy mustache fumbled in his coat for matches, hands shaking violently. Hollis hissed at him, steady. "Don't you drop them." Mary pressed James tighter against her, crooning nonsense words through her tears. The first flicker of flame caught, a small blue tongue licking greasy fat. Then the pile roared to life, throwing grotesque shadows over the snow. Hollis didn't look at Mary. Bushy mustache wouldn't meet her eyes at all. Sarah had gone silent, exhausted from terror, slumped against Mary's hip. Whimpering, Mary forced herself to turn James so the heat hit him. "Breathe, baby," she begged. The flames crackled, spitting sparks into the night. The torches on the horizon paused. The men hunting them seemed to hesitate, confused by the sudden fire on the prairie. Mary didn't care. She didn't look at them. She watched. James's lips. She prayed. She felt his chest jerk once. He coughed. A thin thread of steam left his mouth. Mary let out a sob that tore something in her throat. But she didn't let go. She wouldn't. Will the fire save James fully? Will the enemy come? James let out another cough, harsher this time, rattling deep in his chest. His eyelids twitched. Mary felt the strength leave her legs, and she dropped to both knees in the snow, gasping. "Come on, baby. Come on," she whispered, voice cracking. She pulled him closer to the heat of the fire, the grotesque pile of burning horseflesh sending greasy black smoke twisting into the sky. Hollis hovered just behind her, face locked in stone. He watched James's chest rise, shallow but moving, and let out the barest grunt of relief. Bushy mustache paced in circles behind them, his boots crunching in the frozen crust. "I can't believe we did that," he muttered, voice shaking. Jesus." Hollis didn't spare him a look. "Save your prayers for when we're safe." Sarah had gone silent in Mary's lap, eyes red and swollen from crying. She clung to her mother's dress with one tiny hand, thumb in her mouth. Shivering uncontrollably, Mary tried to hold them both. One arm around Sarah, one hand resting on James's chest. She felt the faint thump of his heart against her palm. The rhythm unsteady but there. She pressed her forehead to his cold hair. "Here, Mama's here." Snow hissed as it hit the hot coals, sending up steam. The wind gusted and blew sparks across the drifted ground, and for a moment Mary thought the whole world might catch fire around them. Bushy mustache suddenly froze mid-step. "Shut up," he snapped at Hollis, who hadn't even spoken. Hollis lifted an eyebrow. Bushy mustache lifted a trembling finger toward the darkness. Mary followed his gaze. Beyond the fire's glow, on the crest of the ridge they'd just climbed, she could see faint shapes, moving horsemen silhouetted against the storm, their torches flickering in the wind. One of them stood in his stirrups, scanning the ground below. They were searching. Mary's mouth went dry. She shifted James behind her as best she could, shielding him with her body. Hollis's voice was low, flat. They saw the fire. Bushy mustache's hand dropped to his pistol, fingers drumming on the worn grip. "They'll know it's us. Nobody else out here would light something that big." Mary felt her heart hammering so hard it hurt. She squeezed Sarah closer. Sarah whimpered. Turning her face into Mary's chest, Hollis drew his own revolver and checked the cylinder with quiet, grim efficiency. Kane's boys don't leave witnesses. Bushy mustache shifted nervously, eyes darting between the ridge and the children. "What's the plan, old man?" Hollis spat in the snow, the sizzle lost in the wind. "We stall him long as we can." Mary swallowed hard. She thought of Samuel reaching for her. Through the fire of James's labored breath, of Sarah's thumb between chapped lips, she closed her eyes for a heartbeat. When she opened them, they were dry. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said hoarsely. Bushy Mustache shivered. "They'll be on us any minute." Hollis didn't answer. He stepped closer to Mary, lowered his voice so only she could hear. "You got one shot at this," he said. Mary blinked at him. "Get them out, however you can. Don't wait for us." Mary's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but the shapes on the ridge began to move, torchlight flickering over the snow, heading straight for them, and she knew there was no time. The wind whipped harder, a banshee's wail over the prairie. The fire snapped and cracked, throwing red light onto terrified faces. Mary held Sarah and James tighter, feeling the heat of the fire on her back, the cold biting at her front. She watched Hollis's eyes glint in the flames, steady and grim. As carved iron, Bushy Mustache kept glancing over his shoulder at the approaching riders, his breath coming faster. 4, 5, 6 of them, he muttered, voice ragged. Mary's heart thudded painfully. She tried to stand, but James's weight and Sarah's grip held her down. Hollis didn't look at her, spoke slow and deliberate, as if explaining to a child how to stop a bleeding wound. "When they come, you don't scream, you don't beg. You take them and run." Mary's lips trembled. "Run where?" she rasped. His eyes finally met hers. They were old eyes, tired, heavy with things done and seen, anywhere but here. Bushy Mustache swore and drew his gun. "They're splitting up," he hissed. Mary risked a glance. Torches bobbed and wavered as the men fanned out, encircling them in the dark. The cold seemed to thicken. Sarah whimpered, hiding her face in Mary's dress. James coughed, a weak rattling sound. His head lolled against her arm, eyelids fluttering. Mary brushed his frozen hair back. "I'm here, love," she whispered, voice splintering. Hollis squatted in front of her, blocking her view of the riders. "You understand what you have to do?" She blinked tears away. "I won't leave you." His voice dropped. "You have to." Bushy Mustache snorted bitterly. "Sweet speech, old man. They'll ride us all down before she makes it 100 yards. Hollis ignored him, pulled a battered leather pouch from his coat, and pressed it into Mary's shaking hand. She didn't look at it. "What's this?" "Matches, dry ones." Bushy Mustache barked a laugh. "You think she's going to stop and light a campfire while they cut her down?" Hollis's face stayed hard. "If she can set the prairie grass alight, even a little, it'll blind them. Spook the horses, buy her a chance." Bushy Mustache stared at him. "That's murder. You'll set half the county burning." Hollis didn't flinch. "You got a better idea?" Silence. The torches were close enough now that Mary could see the glint of rifles. Kane's men shouted to each other over the wind. Their words lost, but the tone clear. Commanding, threatening. Mary felt her guts twist. She looked at Hollis. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't begging. He was giving her permission. Sarah stirred in her lap, sniffling. "Mama." Mary closed her eyes tight. She felt the old leather pouch in her palm. Her thumb rubbed over the cracked surface. Memorizing it, she took a ragged breath and nodded once. Hollis let out a long sigh, something breaking in his chest. "Good girl," he whispered. Bushy Mustache turned away, shoulders slumping. They all heard the first shot ring out in the night. The horses screamed. Kane's men whooped and hollered, spurring forward. Mary snapped her eyes open. Hollis surged to his feet, revolver in hand. "Run," he bellowed. Mary staggered upright, James limp against her shoulder. Sarah wailing. Bushy Mustache fired into the dark, muzzle flashes tearing holes in the black. Hollis turned and met her eyes one last time, his face lit orange by the hellish fire. "Don't look back." She didn't. She ran. Mary ran through the snow, breath tearing her lungs raw, the sound of her boots crunching like bones breaking. James sagged in her arms, dead weight, his shallow breathing a whisper in the storm. Sarah clung to her hip, crying silent tears, now too tired even to wail. Her thumb had fallen from her mouth, raw and bleeding where she'd chewed it. Mary didn't dare look back, but she heard them. Gunshots cracked through the night. men shouting, horses screaming as they spooked in the wind and fire. Hollis's voice boomed once, then was swallowed by the storm. She bit down on a sob. Don't look back. Her hair whipped across her face, damp with melted frost and sweat. She tried to focus on every step, every drag of breath. Sarah's head bounced against her shoulder. "Mama," the girl whimpered. "I've got you." Mary gasped, voice shredded. Snow stung her cheeks like hot coals. She stumbled, fell to one knee. James let out a thin cry. "Barely there," she nearly screamed in frustration. "Get up!" She forced herself onto numb feet, swaying. The dry match pouch dug into her palm. She looked around wildly. Nothing but blowing white. The prairie was endless. No rocks. No trees. Just grass, poking through the snow in patches, dry as paper. She remembered Hollis's order. Burn it. Mary sucked in air like it was shards of glass. She turned once, just enough to see orange flames flickering behind her on the ridge. The dark shapes of riders moving in confusion, cursing at the fire. Hollis had set. He was buying her time, at the cost of his life. She wanted to scream his name, but she shut her mouth so hard her teeth clicked. Run? She staggered forward, finding another small hollow. The grass was thicker there, yellowed and brittle. James let out a strangled sob. Sarah whimpered again, shaking uncontrollably. Mary fell to her knees and shifted them both in front of her. Arms wrapped around their shivering bodies, she fumbled. The pouch opened with trembling fingers, dry matches. She had no idea if they'd even catch in this wind. She pulled one out, striking it against the grit strip. Nothing, another spark. It died in the wind. She cursed, teeth bared. "Please," she rasped. She hunched over them, shielding the next match with her body. This time it flared. She held it to the grass. Nothing, another. Match, spark, flame. The grass hissed, blackening at first, then igniting with a sullen glow that brightened. Eating the brittle stalks, heat touched her frozen fingers. Smoke curled, crit and choking. Mary felt something break in her chest. She pressed her forehead to James's. "Hold on," she pleaded. She pressed Sarah closer with one arm. Shielding her eyes, the fire spread slowly at first, then faster. The wind catching it and throwing sparks downwind, it roared suddenly, catching a large patch, sending flames 4 feet high. The prairie would burn. Mary didn't know if that would kill them all, or save them. She didn't care. She only cared about the warmth. She rocked them both, feeling the fire's heat against her back as it crept around them. In the distance, she heard riders cursing. They were veering off, some heading back, but one voice, clear and sharp, rose over the rest. "Find them." She snapped her head up. A dark silhouette on horseback was coming straight at them. Weaving through the flames, the man leaned low in the saddle, rifle ready, shouting something she couldn't make out. Over the wind, Mary's heart stopped. She couldn't run anymore, not with both children. Her hand fell to the cold, worn handle of the kitchen knife tucked in her belt. She drew it, blade trembling. James wheezed in her arms. Sarah sobbed once. "Mama." Mary set her jaw so hard it ached. She stood slowly, planting her feet in the burning grass. When the rider came, she would be ready. Mary stood in the burning grass, wind tearing at her hair, eyes locked on the rider approaching. His horse was spooked by the smoke, but driven hard, nostrils flaring, mane slick with frost and sweat. The rider leaned low, rifle aimed, eyes narrowed against the sparks swirling in the air. Mary tightened her grip on the knife. The handle was slick with melting ice and blood from her cracked knuckles. James wheezed in her arms, limp as a sack of flour, his breath ragged. Sarah let out a high, thin whimper. "Mama." Mary didn't flinch. She felt the heat at her back. As the fire roared higher, sparks whipped past, setting the grass around her ablaze. The rider shouted, something she couldn't hear over the wind. He raised his rifle. Mary's jaw locked. Come on. She growled. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked like thunder. Snow exploded at her feet, spraying up in frozen shards. Sarah screamed. Mary didn't move. The horse reared. Spooked by the fire, nearly unseating its rider, he swore, jerking. The reins. The horse danced sideways, eyes rolling white, hooves striking sparks on frozen stones. Mary took one step forward, knife raised, her legs trembled. She felt every year of hard living in the creak of her bones, every loss in the hollow ache in her chest, but she kept going. The rider cursed and leveled the rifle again, fighting the horse's panic. The wind shifted, smoke billowed between them, thick and choking. Mary coughed, blinking tears. The rider lost. Her in the smoke. She heard him curse again. Goddamn witch. Find her. He fired blind. The shot whined past her ear. Sarah screamed again. Sobbing, Mary dropped low, wrapping both children in her arms. She pulled them tight against her, shielding them with her body as the fire roared around them. Smoke stung her nose and throat, searing hot. She forced herself to breathe shallowly, ears ringing. The horse screamed and bolted, rider yelling as he fought for control. Crashing into burning grass, Mary didn't wait. She staggered sideways, dragging her children. With her, using the smoke like a cloak, her boots slipped in the mud under melting snow. She nearly fell, catching herself with one hand, the knife blade slicing her own palm. She didn't feel it. She heard other riders shouting nearby. They're everywhere. She squeezed her eyes shut. God help me. James coughed again, horribly wet. Mary opened her eyes. She saw a gap in the flames where the smoke was thinner, a break in the burning grass, leading down to a dry wash. She didn't think. She ran for it. Sarah clung to her neck. Sobbing in terror, James lolled in her arms, breath rattling. The smoke thinned as she stumbled into the wash. A narrow gully choked with ice and dead brush. She slid down the bank, landing hard, knees jarring, snow packed in her boots. Wet and cold. She dropped to her knees, gasping. James's head lolled back. His lips were blue. James, she cried, slapping his cheek lightly. No response. Tears blurred her vision. She pressed her ear to his chest. She heard it, barely a heartbeat, but so weak. Her vision cleared in an instant. She wiped her tears on the back of her wrist, smearing soot and blood across her face. She rocked him gently. I'm here. Don't you leave me. Don't you dare. Sarah buried her face in Mary's shoulder, hiccuping sobs. Above them, the fire raged on the ridge. Shadows of riders flitted back and forth in the smoke. She heard one of them scream in pain as a horse burned. Another fired wildly into the night. Mary pressed her children close, heart pounding. She didn't know how long they had, but she knew it wasn't long enough. Mary crouched in the dry wash, arms locked around her children like a human barricade. Smoke drifted down from the ridge in dark, sooty clouds, turning the air gritty. The flames cast a flickering glow that made every shadow jump and twist. James's head rested against her chest. Breath so shallow she had to press her cheek to his to feel it. Sarah's small hands clawed at Mary's dress, tiny nails biting into her side with panic. Mary forced herself to whisper. She, it's okay. But it was pounded. Above them, hooves pounded. Riders crisscrossed the ridge, their shouts angry and panicked. The wind carried their curses like a demon choir. Over here? Damn. Fire, get around it. She heard the terror in their voices, even as they hunted her. Mary's jaw tightened. She felt older than she ever had doled, like the land itself. Her back ached from holding them. Her lungs burned with smoke, but she wouldn't let go. Not now. She adjusted James, carefully brushing his hair back. His skin was icy to the touch, lips tinged purple. Don't you leave me. She ripped the edge of her own petticoat with shaking fingers, balling it in her palm, and pressed it to his nose and mouth to warm the air he breathed. It was all she could think to do. Sarah whimpered against her neck. Mama, I want Papa. Mary's eyes blurred with tears she refused to shed. I know, baby, she croaked. The word Papa rang in her ears like a funeral bell. Samuel was gone. This is what's left. This is all that matters now. A shout snapped her head up above them. On the ridge, 2 riders had stopped, torches in hand, peering down into the wash. There, Mary flattened her body over the children, heart in her throat. They started down, the horses struggling in the icy slope. Mary's fingers closed around the knife at her belt, the blade still wet with her own blood. She felt the weight of every mistake in her life. It's pressing on her, but this one she would not make. She would not be taken, not alive. She adjusted her grip on the knife, angling it so the blade wouldn't flash in the firelight. Sarah's eyes went wide. "Mama," Mary forced. A smile, though her teeth chattered. "Close your eyes, sweetheart." Sarah obeyed. Sobbing softly, James didn't even stir. Mary turned her face away, so they couldn't see the tears finally sliding free. Above them, the riders were nearly on the wash's edge, torches flaring, smoke curling around their hats. One man barked an order. "Fan out, check the brush." They'd be in the gully in seconds. Mary let out a breath that came out ragged, visible in the freezing air. She braced her knees in the dirt, as cold soaking through her torn dress. She raised the knife. "God forgive me." The fire behind them crackled, like a devil's laughter, throwing sparks that drifted lazily down into the wash. One landed on the dry brush near Mary's knee. She watched it catch, a small tongue of flame. The grass smoked. Then flared heat. Light, Mary's eyes widened. The wash is full of dry brush. It would go up like a funeral pyre. She turned her face to the children, breath catching. If it burned, they might all die here, but the riders would never get them. Above, men shouted in alarm, seeing the spark catch. Fire. Mary made her choice. She lowered the knife, and with trembling fingers, she pushed the burning branch deeper into the brush. The flames roared to life, racing away from her in both directions, a wall of heat and light. Sarah shrieked. Hiding her face, James didn't move. Mary closed her eyes, pressing them both to her chest. The fire roared up around them, turning the gully into hell. And above it all, she heard the riders cursing, falling back in panic. But she didn't dare. Hope, because she knew the fire might just kill them too. The gully lit up with firelight, so bright it hurt Mary's eyes. Flames roared in both directions, feeding on the dry brush. The heat became unbearable in seconds, pushing sweat from every pore despite the freezing night. Smoke boiled up around her, black and choking. Sarah was screaming now in panic, tiny fists beating against Mary's shoulder. "Mama, it's hot." Mary didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was raw from smoke and crying. She tightened her arms around them both, shielding their faces as best she could. Bending low so the worst of the smoke curled above her head, James lay limp, a doll with no weight of his own. She could feel his heart fluttering like a bird's. Wings so fragile, she looked up through tears as the flames jumped to the far bank. Igniting more brush, it was a wall of fire now, cutting them off completely. Above them on the ridge, the riders cursed and pulled back, horses bucking in terror. Sparks floated up into the freezing air, twinkling like hateful stars. Mary forced herself to think, this gully will turn into a furnace. She shifted James higher on her hip. Her arm nearly numb, she turned to Sarah. "Listen to me," she rasped. Sarah shook her head wildly, hair stuck to her tear-streaked face. "Mamuno." "No." Mary grabbed her chin gently but firmly. "Look at me, baby." Sarah's eyes met hers, wide and dark and terrified. "We have to move now." Sarah wailed. Mary felt something break inside. "God, help me. I'm sorry." She used her last ounce of strength to stand, knees shaking. The heat blasted her face, making her skin feel like it would peel off. She turned sideways, shielding the children, and forced her way toward the narrowest part of the gully, where the flames were weakest. She plunged through the smoke. Fire licked her skirt. She smelled singeing fabric and nearly gagged. Sarah coughed, choked, screamed. James made a weak, pathetic sound. Mary didn't stop. She barreled through a curtain of sparks, slamming into the icy bank on the other side. She lost her footing and fell. Twisting her ankle badly, a white-hot pain shot up her leg. She clamped her mouth shut to keep from screaming. She rolled, shielding the kids from the impact, and ended up on her back, staring up at the smoke-choked sky. Snow fell in lazy flakes, melting as it touched the flames. Turning to hiss and steam, she tried to stand. Her ankle buckled. She bit down on a sob. She forced herself up on one knee. Teeth bared, breath rattling, Sarah sobbed into her neck. James didn't move. She pressed a shaking hand to his chest. No. Breath. For 1 second her vision went black at the edges. No. Please. God, no. She pressed harder. She thought she felt a faint flutter, but she wasn't sure. She bent low over him, tears falling freely, mouth to his frozen lips, trying to warm them with her breath. Come on, baby, she pleaded in a cracked whisper. The fire behind them roared on, above on the ridge. Men shouted in confusion, calling to one another. They'd lost her in the smoke for now, but it wouldn't last. She heard a voice closer than before, deep, male Mary. Her head snapped up, hair falling in her eyes. She froze. She knew that voice. It didn't belong to any of the raiders. It belonged to a ghost from the past, a man she'd buried in her memory, the last man she'd ever wanted to see again. And he was coming through the smoke, pistol in hand, calling her name like a prayer. Mary couldn't breathe. The flames crackled behind her, a red and orange wall that spat sparks into the night. Smoke stung her eyes so badly, they watered constantly, blurring everything. But she saw him. Through the drifting gray and black, he appeared on horseback, reins tight in one hand, pistol in the other. He wasn't one of them. He wasn't shouting curses or orders. He was saying her name, Mary. He sounded desperate. That voice hit her like a punch to the chest, the weight of too many years and too many regrets pressed down all at once. She clutched James tighter. Ignoring the numb pain in her fingers, Sarah whimpered against her shoulder. Half-conscious with smoke inhalation, her tears streaking sooty cheeks, Mary's heart thudded painfully. The man dismounted in a rush, boots sinking into slush and ash. Sparks floated around him, landing on his coat and hat. He batted them away, eyes locked on her. He was older now, face-lined and rough, dark hair threaded with gray. His eyes burned bright despite the smoke. Mary, for God's sake, come on. Was close enough for her to see the pain there, and the fear. She tried to speak, but coughed instead. Doubling over, he sprinted the last few feet, nearly slipping in the mud. Grabbing her arm to steady her, she flinched from his touch. He froze, eyes wide, reading everything in her face, but there was no time for history. Not now. He let out a strangled sound. Mary. Please, give me James. Let me carry him. Can't do this alone. She looked at him, truly looked, fighting the tears that stung her eyes worse than the smoke. They had once talked of building a ranch together, of children, of growing old side by side. He had promised her forever, but forever had ended with gunshots and betrayal years before. And yet here he was. Why? Sarah let out another choking sob. Mary blinked hard. She felt James's weight in her arms, too light. His skin was like ice. He didn't make a sound. She pressed her ear to his chest, straining. A faint beat so weak she let out a sob that scraped. Her throat rawed. She felt the man's hand on her shoulder. Mary, give him to me now, before he's gone. Her hands trembled. She didn't trust him. Didn't even know. She hated him. But she knew she couldn't carry both kids much longer. She couldn't save them alone. She swallowed, mouth dry as ashes. Finally she nodded. He let out a breath like he'd been shot. Gently, he took James from her arms. The boy flopped limply. Jesus. The man whispered. Mary pulled Sarah tighter to her chest, shifting her weight onto her bad ankle. Pain shot up her leg, but she refused to fall. The man looked. Back at her. Come on. There's a way out over the ridge. I know it. We have to move now before that fire traps us. Mary hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to trust him, but the fire was roaring closer. They had seconds. She forced herself to move. He adjusted James carefully, cradling him with real care. Mary, he said, voice cracking, I'm not letting you do this alone. Not again. She didn't answer. She just started limping forward. Sarah crying quietly into her dress. The fire roared behind them, eating the last of the dry brush in the wash. They didn't look back. They couldn't, because one spark could take it all. And as they climbed toward the ridge, the wind shifted again, sending the flames racing right at them. The wind howled over the ridge like a living thing, sending sheets of sparks tumbling through the night sky. Mary climbed with Sarah clinging to her neck, her ankle a searing brand of pain. Each step felt stolen. Behind them, the fire surged higher, greedy and loud, devouring the wash they just escaped. She didn't dare look back. The man in front of her, him. The ghost from her past, cradled James close, talking to the boy in low, urgent whispers she could barely hear over the roar. Hang on, son. Don't you let go now. Don't you dare. Mary swallowed hard. Son, he didn't even know. Didn't know. James was his. She pushed the thought away with a bitter taste in her mouth. Now wasn't the time. She stumbled, nearly falling to her knees. Sarah squealed in fear. The man spun, hand out to steady her. Careful. Mary flinched from his touch, but she let him grab her elbow, his finger strong, familiar in a way that made her heart twist. His eyes met hers through the smoke. Mary, don't you quit on me. I'm not leaving you again. She glared at him, eyes full of unshed tears, and forced herself to straighten. Move, she rasped. He nodded once and turned, pushing through the snow-dusted brush toward the narrow pass he'd promised. The wind whipped their clothes, made the flames roar like 1,000 demons behind them. They moved in jerks and stumbles, his boots sliding on icy ground. Mary's breath rattled in her chest. She coughed, tasting blood. Her lungs felt raw. Sarah whimpered, too exhausted to scream now. They crested the ridge. Mary blinked through tears and smoke. Below them lay dark trees, cold and unburned. A river glinted silver in the moonlight. Salvation, but the wind shifted again. A new gust sent burning branches tumbling over the ridge. Flames crackled in the grass at their feet. The man cursed. Turning his body to shield James, Mary felt heat sear her skirt. She slapped at it with a yelp. The fabric. Smoking. Come on. He shouted hoarsely. Down. Now. They half ran, half fell down the slope, ice slicing their palms and knees. Sarah shrieked once, going limp in Mary's arms. Mary screamed her name, heart thudding like a war drum. But Sarah whimpered and buried. Her face, still alive. Mary kept moving. The man was just ahead. Boots slipping, James's limp form cradled tight. Smoke billowed behind them, chasing them like a hungry beast. At the bottom of the slope, they crashed into frozen reeds by the river. Mary fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching Sarah to her. The man spun, scanning the bank. We can't stay here. The fire will jump the river if the wind holds. We have to cross. Mary looked at the black water, freezing, choked with ice. Her teeth chattered. We'll drown. He shook his head, fierce. Better wet and cold than burned alive. He looked at her, eyes pleading. Mary, please, we don't have time. Stared at him, every memory crashing down. The night he left, the letter she never sent, the love she buried. She felt old, so goddamned old. But Sarah stirred in her arms. James let out a tiny, rattling cough in his. Mary swallowed the taste of regret. She nodded once, and they waded into the black, freezing river. The current bit at her legs. Pulling at her skirt, ice cracked underfoot. Sarah whimpered but clung tighter. Mary felt the numbness spread through her bones. Every step a fight. Halfway across, the wind roared, sending a wave of sparks high overhead, lighting the riverbank in. An orange glow. She didn't dare look back. because she knew the fire was there, chasing them, and she had no idea they'd make it to the other side, alive. The river was black and icy as death. Mary hissed as the water swallowed her to the knees. Then the waist, sending a cold so deep it felt like knives in her bones. Sarah clung to her. Wailing softly, breath steaming, the man held James against his chest, trying to keep the boy's face above the water. Mary, he shouted, voice hoarse over the crackle of the flames behind them. Stay close. She tried, but the current was stronger than she'd realized. It yanked at her skirts, spun her sideways. She nearly lost her grip on Sarah. Hold on, baby. Hold on, she gasped, fighting to plant her feet on the slick rocks. Sarah sobbed, fingers digging into her collar. The man lunged through the water toward her. Give me your hand. Mary shook her head. I've got her. A branch snapped behind them with a roar, flaming pieces tumbling into the river. Sending up clouds of hissing steam, the heat blasted her back even as she froze. The wind gusted again, whipping her hair. Across her face, for one terrible moment, she smelled her own hair singeing. She screamed, slapping at it, losing her footing. She fell sideways into the current. Sarah shrieked. The freezing water closed over them. She kicked blindly, fighting to get her head up. When she surfaced, she couldn't see anything but black water and orange light dancing on the waves. Sarah. She screamed, choking, a splash. The man had turned, wading back toward her with James cradled high on one arm. He was panting, eyes wild. Mary? She gasped, half sobbing. I can't, but then Sarah's face broke the surface, coughing. Eyes wide with terror, Mary lunged, wrapping an arm around her. Got you. I've got you. They clung together, shivering so hard their teeth clattered. The man reached them, face lined with fury and fear. Don't you let go of her. Mary, don't you let go. I know, she spat, voice cracking. He glanced over his shoulder. The fire had reached the bank behind them. Flames danced 20 feet high, lighting the ice-choked water like a demonic sunrise. Embers rained around them. We're almost there. He bellowed, Push, Mary! She did. Every step felt like daggers in her knees. Her breath came in ragged sobs. Sarah's weight was unbearable, but she pushed. The current tugged at her. Boots she felt ice crack and shift under her soles. Don't stop. He was ahead now, James limp on his shoulder. One hand outstretched to her. She could see the far bank snow. Dead grass, safety, Mary. Forced herself to move. Her vision blurred. Her fingers had no feeling left in them. Sarah was so cold she'd gone silent. Head on Mary's shoulder. She had to get her out. The man reached her. He wrapped an arm around her back, hauling her up the last stretch. Together they staggered onto the muddy bank, collapsing in a tangle of wet clothes and shuddering limbs. Mary didn't let go of Sarah. The man laid James down carefully on the snow. Pressing an ear to the boy's chest, Mary forced herself onto her knees. Is he? The man didn't answer at first. He pressed harder, his eyes frantic. Mary felt her heart stop. Don't you dare, she whispered. He looked up at her. I don't know, he said, voice cracking. He broke off, pressing. Again, Mary clawed through the mud to James's side. She put a trembling hand on his cold cheek. His eyes fluttered. Mary let out a ragged sob, but the man's head jerked up. He was staring at the far tree line. Mary. He rasped. She followed his gaze. Shapes, men on horseback, moving slow, watching silent. The fire behind them roared louder, throwing their long shadows across the snow. Mary felt her breath catch. Who were they? She pulled Sarah tighter, heart hammering. The man put a hand on his pistol, eyes narrow. Get behind me, he said softly. The flames had faded to a dull red glow behind them, smoke rising in a twisting black column that stained the pale dawn sky. Mary's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She forced them around Sarah, who clung without sound now, the girl's face pale, eyes hollow with shock. Mud sucked at Mary's knees as she tried to rise. Her wet skirts clung heavy and cold, weighing her down like the guilt in her chest. Man crouched nearby, pressing fingers to James's throat, closed his eyes, relief breaking over his haggard face. He's breathing. Mary sagged, one breath away from sobbing. She wiped her eyes on her sleeve and winced at the raw scrape of ice on her skin. The wind picked up, dry and cutting. It blew sparks off the dying blaze, carrying the charred stink of their ruined homestead. She turned to look behind her. Where their cabin had been was now nothing but black, smoking bones. Years of labor, dreams they'd carved from stubborn prairie dirt, gone in a single night. She pressed her lips together until they stung. The man watched her, his eyes catching. The ember light. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He looked just as ruined. "Mary," he said finally, voice rough. "We need to move. They're watching us." She stiffened. Slowly she turned. The riders had dismounted now, shapes moving. Among the skeletal trees, they didn't speak, they didn't threaten, just stood there watching. Mary's heart pounded like a trapped animal. "Who are they?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately. His hand went to his holster, fingers tapping the worn leather like a nervous tell. "Could be ranch hands," he said. "Could be worse." Mary swallowed hard. Her eyes went to James, lying limp but breathing. To Sarah, who shivered against her side, was too shocked to cry anymore. She couldn't fight anyone. She could barely stand, and she realized with a cold twist. In her stomach, they knew it too. One of the men in the trees stepped forward. He lifted a hand, palm out a gesture of peace. But Mary didn't feel peace. She felt hunted. The man at her side shifted closer. "If this goes bad," he murmured, "you run with them." Mary shook her head, jaw set. "I'm not leaving you." He gave her a pained look, and for a moment the wind caught in his throat. "Don't make me watch you vanish again," he rasped. Mary's breath hitched. The riders fanned out slowly, deliberately. "There." Leader dropped his hand and called, voice mild but carrying. "Got some cold children there. It can help you." Mary shivered. The words were right, but the tone was all wrong. She glanced at the man beside her. His face had gone hard. Eyes flat. He didn't answer the offer. Sarah whimpered, pressing her face to Mary's shoulder. Mary looked down at her babies, then back at the men who meant to claim them. One way or another, she squared her shoulders and forced her frozen mouth to speak. "What do you want from us?" The man beside Mary didn't answer the rider's question, just rested his hand on his revolver, thumb grazing the worn metal. Mary held Sarah tighter, her arm like a protective shackle around the girl's tiny frame. The leader of the riders moved another step closer, boots crunching in frost-kissed grass. His face was shadowed beneath a hat pulled low, but his voice was calm, almost gentle. "Just looking to share your fire," he said, though there was no fire left but dying embers. Mary's eyes flicked to the glowing coals behind them. The wreckage of their life still smoldered. She tried again. "Cold night for kids to be out." "Let's get them warm, eh?" Sarah whimpered, burying her face in Mary's coat. Mary swallowed the acid in her throat. The man at her side spoke finally, voice low and flat. "State your business." "You've been tracking us since the fire started?" Silence fell, heavy as a gravestone. The rider's companions shifted uneasily. One spat in the dirt. Another thumbed the hammer on his own sidearm, a slow, deliberate sound meant to be heard. The leader didn't flinch. "Don't want trouble," he said mildly. "But a family running through the woods at night, that attracts it." Mary's chest tightened. She felt James's limp weight in her other arm. She couldn't run. She couldn't fight. Her voice cracked. "Please, just let us be." For a moment, the leader didn't move. Didn't even breathe. Then his head tilted. "You got nothing left," he said, eyes flicking to the smoldering ruin behind them. "Nothing to trade, nothing to bargain with." The man beside her shifted, blocking her with his body. "You're not taking them." Silence. Then the rider's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been so cold. "Ain't up to you," he said softly. His hand drifted toward his holster. Mary felt her blood freeze. The man at her side tensed, breath hissing between his teeth. Time seemed to stretch. Wind sighed through the burned husks of trees. Sarah's whimper was the only sound. Then a voice broke the tension, raspy, angry, scared. "James, leave, my mama, alone." He'd come, too barely conscious. But his small voice cracked with fury. Mary felt a sob claw at her throat. The rider's smile faded. His eyes hardened. The man beside Mary drew his gun. "Get behind me." She didn't argue. She hauled James and Sarah back, knees sinking in the cold mud. Arms shaking, the leader of the riders flicked his hand in a silent signal. His men spread out. Mary felt her heart break all over again, because she knew there would be no talking now, only survival or death. She pressed her lips to Sarah's hair and whispered against her scalp, "Don't look." Ahead, the man she once loved raised his revolver and leveled it at the rider who meant to take everything. Gunfire cracked like splitting timber. The man she loved fired first, dropping the nearest rider with a single shot, but the others drew fast. Mary screamed, shoving James and Sarah into the brush. Mud sucked at her boots as she turned, eyes wild, heart clawing at her ribs. She saw the man spin as a bullet ripped through his coat. He went to a knee, teeth bared in pain, but fired again. A second rider fell, clutching his chest, but the leader was moving, calm as death. Revolver steady. Mary felt her throat close. No. She scooped James into her arms, grabbed Sarah's hand and ran. Behind her, the world was fire and thunder. Gunshots lit the trees with brief, horrible light. She heard him shout her name once regged. Desperate. Then another shot. Silence. Mary fell to her knees, sobbing into James's hair. Sarah clung to her, silent tears cutting channels through the ash. On her cheeks, the dawn was cold and merciless. Birds did not sing. Smoke drifted and lazy, ruinous ribbons above the blackened skeleton of their home. Finally she looked back. He was there, on his back. In the churned mud, his revolver lay at his side, empty. 3 bodies lay around him, but he didn't move. Mary crawled to him on hands and knees, fingers shaking as she brushed his face. Warm? His eyes fluttered. "Mary," she choked, "don't you dare die on me." He coughed blood on his lips, but his hand found hers. "Told you not leaving." Again. She pressed her forehead too. His, the wind howling around them like a dirge. He smiled even as the light faded from his eyes. "I'm home." Mary, his chest fell still. Mary felt something inside her crack. Deep and final, but she didn't scream, didn't sob. She sat there, holding his cooling body. The children pressed to her sides, watching the black smoke rise into the dawn, and when Sarah finally spoke, voice breaking, "Mama." "What do we do now?" Mary closed her eyes, dug deep, and answered in a voice like iron. "We survive." She lifted her head, tears shining. The prairie was still cold, unforgiving, but it was theirs, and nothing, no fire, no men, no death would. Take that from them again. Asterisk if this story touched you even a little, don't leave without showing it. Click like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next tale of the frontier. It's because some stories shouldn't be forgotten.